I'll now read a roll call of the board to identify who is present. Please identify yourself first before speaking for the record. Commissioner Ames Messenger.
Ames Messenger present.
Commissioner Mohammed.
Mohammed present.
And we will excuse Commissioner Simmons this morning. Members of the public who would like to provide comment to this committee can do so by signing up the day before, up to the day of the meeting. Members of the public interested in submitting public comment during board meetings may sign up by emailing at public.comment@bcps.k12.md.us. 5 people or groups can sign up for public comment. And an email message attaching a statement no longer than 400 words may be read aloud by board member, staff. An email message with a 3-minute video that will be broadcast during the meeting may also be submitted, or yeah, those are the options. Finally, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering or answering questions from the public. If you have follow-up questions or feedback to provide to the board, please email schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us and the board office staff will provide a response to you. With that, I'm happy for us to jump into the agenda this morning. And we do have a number of things on the agenda, a number of supplemental appropriations, but we'll start this morning with the AMP implementation update. And I did see a number of folks that I can imagine are here for that presentation. Chief Nelson, Chief Tommy Jones, and others I can imagine as well, but take it away.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm here with a number of my AMP colleagues for this quarter's AMP update. So AMP is aligned with the board's priorities 3 and 5. This is a multi-year initiative to modernize our systems and core processes. We have a lot more sections in green to report now this quarter, now that we have 100% of our staff using our new time and attendance system, UKG, to clock in every day. In Ochre, we've got the sections that we're focusing on next, in particular our data archive, where we've migrated our legacy data and are getting that up and running. And then a few areas in white that we'll be tackling in the coming year. So since we last presented, we presented at the full board meeting in December, which was right after we went live with HCM and payroll. And I think it was 2 days after we had turned on SSM, and we are very pleased that we've successfully run payroll a number of times. We've successfully brought on our managers and our school police officers in February using the time and attendance system themselves daily. And as of last week, we now have all of our staff using that time and attendance system. We do have a system that I know the board was really interested in learning more about how we're tracking how this is going. So yes, we have data that we've been able to pay employees and we've been able to pay them accurately, but we're also tracking the number of concerns that we get. So we have this Power BI dashboard set up. Here's a screenshot from that. We have received 1,280 tickets so far. You can see the time to resolve. And in fact, I'm going to try to escape this for a second. We've got a whole variety of different views that our team uses to monitor the data that's coming in through the heat tickets. And this is available to the board as well. We're really pleased that most of our tickets are getting resolved very quickly in less than 1 day. These include things like users having access issues with the website or the mobile app, some basic payroll or time clock inquiries. These are typically things that one team can resolve. And then we have about 1/8 of our tickets that are getting resolved in more than 1 day, but in a few days. And these are things more, some timesheet inquiries that require a little bit of follow-up, but are able to resolve still fairly quickly. And then we have about a third of the tickets that are taking more than 3 or 4 days to resolve. Some of these are system updates that we're logging, and either our development team on OIT or the consultants that we're working with are needing to do technical updates, building new functionality, new integrations, things like that. And then some of them were in the flurry of launching the system, tickets that didn't get closed out quite as quickly as they could have while the work was being done. But we're using this to monitor overall challenges and their resolution, and finding this really helpful. Here's a little bit about, so that was about the inquiries that we've had coming in through the heat ticketing system. Here are some of the statistics about use. So these are a couple weeks old at this point from when we submitted this deck to the board. We've had over 10,000 users log into Fusion. We now have 1,200, almost 1,300 tickets logged in Heat. Over half of them are getting resolved in 1 business day. We've had over 1,500 P-stars entered and over 800 onboarding journeys, which are the workflow through which a new employee gets all of their pre-employment paperwork taken care of and get loaded into the system and get systems access. So this quarter for AMP has really been focused on training and supporting primarily timekeepers and helping the users on their team to use UKG to log their time and attendance. And we have supported timekeepers and end users in a variety of different avenues to make sure that we're meeting their needs. We've held over 259 office hours, 17 lab hours, 12 hours of instructor-led training. So staff are engaging support from our change management and training team in a variety of different ways to make sure that they can use these systems effectively and are getting the help that they need. And we're really pleased that everyone was paid using the new system, but we're also looking at how well and accurately we're using the system. And this graph shows that when we first launched the system, that first pay period that closed, our payroll team had to process 752 quick pays, which may sound like a lot, but we have over 12,000 people we pay every pay period. So it's a relatively small fraction of that, but still a lot of work that our payroll team was having to do beyond running payroll. And so we wanted to get that down as low as possible, as quickly as possible, because staff are able to accurately use the time and attendance system as it was intended. And we're seeing that over time, we have been able to do that with our first pay in April, having very few quick pays that the payroll team had to process.
One quick just clarification on this.
Yes.
So when you say quick pay, is that the process by which when somebody has not done what they need to, that it can be resolved and paid still? Is that, I guess, tell me a little bit more about quick pays.
Yeah, and I know Connie Bassi is here if she wants to add anything, but a quick pay is when the payroll team is having to cut an extra paycheck for someone, usually because there's been a discrepancy in the time entered, and so someone's getting underpaid, and they're processing a check manually to be able to make that employee whole. So something that we can do because yeah, thank you, Connie.
Emily, you got it.
I've learned well from you and your team. So again, something that we think is important for offering good customer service, helping our district employees, but not something that we want to be doing on a regular basis, and certainly very time consuming for the payroll team. So we're looking to continue to maintain the very low level that the team's been able to achieve through the first couple of months of phase 3 go live. So here is the timesheet workflow that we've been working really hard with end users, especially with timekeepers and with approvers, to make sure that employees are logging their time accurately every day. If they miss a punch, they're working with their timekeeper to get that resolved. very soon after it happens, not waiting until the end of the pay period. Then on the final day of the pay period, the employee makes sure that all of their punches are there. They submit it to their timekeeper. The timekeeper looks it over and approves it. The approver looks it over and approves it, and it goes to payroll so that they can process on time and accurate paycheck. And we're also working to get this all happening on time every pay period for all employees. So the Group 2 support, Group 2 started using UKG themselves last week. We have some additional reference materials that were sent out to schools and offices to print and post near time clocks, which have the QR codes to access the quick reference guides, the QRGs. We had our Change Champion meeting right the week before go live to make sure that they were ready to support their colleagues and point them to resources that were available if they had any issues. We had extra communications that went out to our ILEDs, our principals, as well as all the Group 2 users to make sure that they knew what they needed to do. We had extra office hours, and of course, a variety of videos, reference guides, and then the trainings that we've been offering. So here was our April schedule. We're just about done it at this point, but a variety of office hours and trainings to support our end users and our timekeepers to make sure everyone was good with using UKG for their attendance tracking. And so the proof will be in the pudding with the pay period that closes this Friday and gets paid next week to make sure that Group 2 is successful, but things have been going well in that respect after we got some initial time clock loading issues worked out last week. And so in closing out the phase 3 chapter of AMP, we have our new Fusion system up and running, and now we're closing out our legacy system, Oracle EBS. So staff have read-only access until the end of May. And then they will not have read-only access because actually the district's license for EBS is ending this fiscal year. And so in May, we're doing a big push to support employees in downloading their records from EBS so they have them in their files. They will, of course, always be able to make a records request to Human Capital. But we'd like people to be able to access things like their old evaluations, their old W-2s, and their work record so that they have them and aren't needing to wait for a records request should they need them in the future. So we're partnering with the unions to offer live sessions in staff. There are also a variety of on-demand resources that they can use in support of downloading their materials by May 29th. And then looking ahead, as I mentioned, we've got a few parts of AMP that we're going to be finishing out over the upcoming year. We have one more quarterly update to the board this year, which will be in June. And then for next year, we're transitioning to a update on a semesterly basis. One will be in September and one will be in March. So thank you. And we've got most of the AMP lead team here to answer any questions that you may have about this quarterly update.
Yeah, thank you for that. Open up to my fellow commissioners.
That was incredibly thorough. I have no questions at this time.
One of the questions, when you go back to the business intelligence dashboard, it was wonderful to see that. And I would love to provide a direct link and maybe like a brief sort of 2 sentences to the full board to be able to just share out, because I know that there are commissioners that would love to take a look at that. As I was looking at, just one question that I was wondering was the data being presented I didn't note if there was a filter on the time frame, if it's always defaults to just all time, or if it's sort of like this, this quarter, this semester, this year, this school year, especially as the data, as it is used over time. Curious how it can time filter for some of what's being represented.
So the dashboard went live when we went live with Fusion for human capital and payroll in December. So this has been for the last 4 months or so. And
certainly some of my thoughts there is, I know that there were, like you were highlighting, a number of the ones that took longer to resolve while you were in the midst of that. I imagine over time, the averages and some of those things will be improving. And if it always contains that initial sort of data set, like if the filter, like the data will always be there, but like if the view always shows all time, it may not give as accurate of a current snapshot, to say like currently this month or this semester, or thinking forward into next school year, right? This dashboard, certainly designed and intended to be used over a longer period of time, right? So anyway, so like that'd be my only wondering is there a way to filter the time period to get a current snapshot, or does it always just default to all time, which is not the worst thing either, right?
Commissioner Chief Nelson, I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I can have the designer of the dashboard actually create a one-pager that will give you all the nuanced detail of how you can filter.
Great. Yeah. So Mr. Carter, I'd love to then have that and be able to share that with the full board, because I think people will be really excited to see this. We'll appreciate the hard work that has gone into it. The fact that you all have created a board dashboard there as part of that is very appreciated. So just want to make sure that we are broadcasting that to the full board as a follow-up, but no other. You answered some of my questions around the pay, the quick pay, and certainly glad for your all sake, especially to see that decrease. And I did wonder if the first payroll that was run was because of all of the challenges in the transition, or if there was some other reason, because that first one, that December, was just so high relative to 23, 798 or so to 23. But certainly appreciate and glad for everybody's
New
sake
system,
that it's 723.
and that was also winter break, which is a little bit confusing and a little bit certainly different than a regular pay period in which there's 10 work days that people are working. So I think those two things together led to the high number of pay corrections that needed to be made.
Yeah, but it is great to see how that's gone down the way it has.
Yeah, and Commissioner Corey, that also.
I do have a question. Sorry, I couldn't raise my hand.
Oh, Commissioner Rohan, let's let Chief Tommy Jones respond to that real quick, and then yes, I'll come right to you.
I was simply saying that number is exactly the way it happens all the time when we roll out these new systems. You can plan, you can program, you can do all of that, but there are always just little quirks. And so, to be honest with you, what only been 1,200 was actually a nice surprise to me. That shows how well the team has done. So we'll adjust the timing so you can select time frames. And yes, it's really a very good rollout to 1,200 and a drop down like that. The team bust their butts off.
Yes, absolutely. Commissioner Mohammed.
I appreciate it. So quick question, something I had interest of, I believe the last time this was presented to us is around just logging in via cell phones. Do our staff have the ability to do that? Are they using that, or is that something we're not, that we should not be doing through this platform?
So we need to differentiate between Fusion and UKG. Fusion doesn't really have a mobile app, so that does require accessing a computer to be able to check your information or make a benefits change if there's a qualifying event, or upload some documentation. So Fusion is computer based. But for UKG, there are 3 options for how staff can clock in on a daily basis. They can do it on a wall clock at their work location. They can do it on a mobile app on a cell phone, or they can do it on a computer. And we're using the combination of those three to make sure that staff on a daily basis can always clock in.
Yeah, and if you don't mind,
Chief,
Chief, yeah, Chief Nelson, just to add a little bit, Chief Muhammad, Chief Nelson said exactly everything was perfect. What you may have been hearing is people complaining about some issues we've had, like for instance, last Monday, we had a problem with some configuration. Staff couldn't use the cell phones to log in as effectively, but we
Time
fixed it.
clocks.
The time clocks, I'm sorry.
The cell phones were working just fine. The time
Right.
clocks weren't working
Time
for
clocks,
a little
right,
bit last
sorry.
week.
The time clocks. But those are just sort of new system, glitches that we've been working with the vendor to do. And it was resolved within a day or two, and we're fully back up to where we're using them. And I'm sure, as we roll out more and more people, there'll be more glitches. And in fact, I talked to a principal the other day about some issues that they had with it being in the school and where it was. So we're going to iron all those out. But it is really, I don't mean to sound Pollyanna, but the rollout has been incredibly smooth and good. The team has really put in the effort.
Any other follow-up to that, Commissioner Mohammed?
Yeah, I think that's great. The question I have just is around, is there a sense of principal autonomy with the options? Do principals have the ability to restrict their staff? Is that something that we want? Principals having the ability to restrict their staff to have to come into main office per se to be able to log in as opposed to using the other options?
We really discourage managers from restricting use of the options. Although we know some schools definitely have procedures that they're encouraging staff to use, which require, swinging by the front office on their way in the building. But we are encouraging managers not to restrict.
Commissioner Mohammed, I actually looked this morning. 3,500 and I think 23 employees actually use the mobile app, and that's throughout the entire district. And to also, when an employee goes to the web access or mobile access, but primarily the web access on their personalized dashboard, there is a section on the bottom right of the bottom left page of the image that I shared in the chat. They have the ability to scan and gain access to be able to load it on their phones if they want to. That's always there for them.
I appreciate the insight. I think that Chief Tommy hit it on the head. Some of these concerns are just coming from the actual users with their inability to, for some at a period of time, to use their phones to log in, and just hearing from principals around flexibility. Just wanted to gain insight as I'm having these conversations, just so I can understand where we are.
Thank you. Commissioner Haynes-Messenger?
Just as a follow-up, I'm misremembering, there's a conversation around when people are using their phones, are we locating where they are when they're signing in terms of like proximity to the building?
Yes, there is geolocation activated if you're using the mobile app.
Well, thank you for that. If there's no other questions, and we certainly do have a number of items on the agenda today, so appreciate this one being first and the updates that you all have provided here. So thank you,
Thank you,
so much.
Commissioners. Thank you, team.
Okay, next on the agenda, we're looking at the Comprehensive Education Facility Master Plan. And so we'll turn that over to the team presenting on that. Maureen, I see you're there. There's a little bit of feedback coming from some audio. I'm not sure whose device that is.
I have a lot of HVAC blowing in my office, but I'm also trying to share.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't control that. But I'm trying to share my screen and it's not letting me, it appears. Is there a permission needed?
Yes, and I'll let those.
We can see your screen.
Oh, okay. It just popped up on my end. I think it's because of the delay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go forward. Okay, my name is Maureen Gersberg, and today we'll be discussing the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Master Plan for 2026. Sorry, it's not behaving. There we go. This aligns with Board Priority 3. The CEFMP is a state-required document that we submit every July 1st. It's composed of data analysis, decisions, and outcomes that are gathered and produced throughout the year. And while we submit it on July 1st, what we submit is really a snapshot of the work that our office does, not only to meet the state requirements but to support other district initiatives and decisions throughout the school year. And it keeps going even after July 1st because it's cyclical. The decisions and analysis that we capture and make the prior years impact the future ones, and that's part of what we look at in this document. These are the topics that we'll be covering today. We're going to start at a high level before we zoom in on Baltimore when we talk about enrollment changes. Immigration has been the primary driver of growth nationwide for the past 5 years. There's been significant changes this past year across every metro area for net immigration due to shifting federal priorities. If we zoom into the state level, we can see that Maryland growth was pretty modest, losses and gains, but the overall growth was half what it was the prior year. And the growth that did occur was led mostly by Prince George's County. City population and city schools enrollment have been in alignment the past 10 years, with both of us experiencing dramatic drops starting in 2015 and then last year leveling out and slight increases. Last year, city schools gained enrollment for the first time in 10 years of over 1,000 students. This change was the result of two consistent drivers, which we'll cover in the next slide: Latino student growth and Black student loss. The map here shows our overall losses between 2016 and 2025. And that's the period where we saw those very consistent trends before things started changing pretty dramatically. This graph demonstrates the changing proportions of city schools enrollment. So Latino student enrollment was increasing on average about 9% each year for the prior 9 years. And then this year we flatlined. It was less than 1%. Concurrently, from 2016 to 2023, Black student enrollment was decreasing on average 3% a year. And that averages out to over 1,800 students a year. But losses appear to have tapered out starting last school year. Last school year, Black student enrollment was 475 less than it was the prior year, and this year it was down 650. So while losses aren't ideal, this is still dramatically less than those historic losses that we were seeing of over 1,800 kids a year. We look at birth rates since they help inform kindergarten projections. The big takeaways on this are that people have been having less kids for years now. It's a nationwide trend, and we see it in Maryland as well. And this graph shows, we call out the percentages, but you can see there's thousands less in births from 2014 between that and 2023. Kindergarten capture rate is a metric we consider as we develop the kindergarten enrollment projections. It's a ratio of kindergarten enrollment to births 5 years earlier. Our kindergarten capture rate increased this year due to two factors. So the kindergarten enrollment remained steady, mostly due to that prior in-migration that we had, but because birth rates are declining, our denominator is smaller. So the capture rate shows an increase, but again, there's a number of factors at play. One of the state requirements for the CEFMP is 10-year enrollment projections. In past years, we were estimating losses of up to 5,000 students. Given last year's gains and this year's slight losses, we've downgraded our 10-year losses to around 1,500 students. We hope that the next few years will show continued stabilization, and maybe at some point we would feel more confident about having 10-year projections that were more of a plateau instead of a drop in a plateau. Utilization of a building is calculated by dividing the enrollment of a program by the number of seats in the building. When we began the 21st Century Buildings Program, our district utilization rate was 78%. As part of the program, we made a commitment to be at or above 86% by SY 1920, which we surpassed. Our out-year utilization is projected to drop to 82%, but given the changing enrollment environment that we've found ourselves in, particularly since 2015, we need to recognize all of the work done to keep our utilization as high as it is, despite the enrollment loss of 8,000 students over the past 10 years. District-wide utilization is important, but so is utilization at the building level. The majority of our capital funding comes from the state, and low utilization is one of the reasons that they'll push back or deny project requests. This and limited funding, which we'll cover later, makes it harder for us to perform necessary projects such as new roofs or a new full system HVAC. This chart shows the percentage of seats by grade band, but keep in mind buildings come in all different sizes. So for example, our 41 elementary level buildings take up less square footage than our 19 high schools. On this map, we show our school zones, and just to help you navigate, the reds, the dark and the light red show underutilization, white and light blue are moderate, they're okay, 76% to 100, and then dark blue shows overutilization. This helps demonstrate how utilization is uneven across the district and is influenced drastically by different enrollment trends. For an example, the black outline you see is the Western Planning Area. Over 1,500 seats have been surplused in that area since SY 15-16, but the average utilization is only 75%. And even that is skewed high because of 66 Mount Royal. Underutilized seats can't be picked up and moved to a part of the city where we need the seats. And then also rezoning to recalibrate seats is very difficult when we have giant swaths that are overutilized. So if I try to rezone Holabird to its adjacent zones to offload some of the overcrowding, I'm just pushing those kids into schools that are already overcrowded. So we're limited in what we can do when we are trying to address over and underutilization. City Schools has made great strides in reducing the footprint of our district by surplusing over 2.7 million square feet since the start of the 21st Century Buildings Program. Guardian and student preferences can make it difficult to predict where seats are needed in a specific school zone or geographic area. Almost half of our K-5 student body is attending a school that isn't their zone school. Our office does work with the city to ensure we're aware of any developments that come online and could potentially bring more students to a specific school. In Baltimore, new developments rarely yield new students coming into the district. If they attract new families at all, they're likely being poached from other schools. The big development on our radar is Perkins Somerset Old Town. We're not too worried about that since that's happening in conjunction with the new City Springs that's being constructed. The other development on our radar is Keys Point, which is surrounded by Aurora, Holabird, and Graceland. As I mentioned before, capital funding is one of the factors that makes it hard to keep up with all of our projects. Capital funding is limited and demand is high. The past few years have been particularly difficult due to dramatically increasing construction costs. That, coupled with an increasing backlog of deferred projects and maintenance, makes it hard to keep up with necessary work. And you can see in this slide, we break down, the comptroller's office did a report, and it breaks down the amount of capital funding per student. And you can see us highlighted there in yellow compared to some of our neighboring jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions are able to put more local funds towards their schools' capital programs. And though the city has upped its CIP capital improvement program allocation in recent and future years, we're still working with a lot less funding per pupil. Future project requests are included in the CEFMP and culminate in the capital improvement program, which we will bring to the board in September for fiscal year 28. For fiscal year 27, we'll be bringing the update on that to the Ops Committee on 5/26. I started this presentation by sharing how the CEFMP is a resource documenting data, analysis, decisions, and outcomes. This information supports and informs district initiatives such as the high school plan, which buildings might receive a renovation, an addition, a new roof, relocation of district programs based on needs and available space, and the annual review of schools. When the 21st Century Buildings Plan began, we were charged with surplusing 26 facilities, but closing the school is much more than checking a box. And when you add in the extra layer of simultaneously experiencing a net loss of over 15,000 Black students and a net gain of over 8,000 Latino students in the past 10 years, the complexity increases, especially since these gains and losses are happening in different parts of the city. The CEFMP contains analysis and information needed for the annual review team to develop their recommendations and for the board to make informed decisions. I'd like to end all my presentations by putting in a plug for our CEFMP dashboard. There are several interactive maps that are very user-friendly, as well as the full PDF. Any questions?
I'll first open up to fellow commissioners. And Commissioner Mohammed, if the hand function is not working, feel free to just come off mute as well. But Commissioner Ains Messenger and Commissioner Mohammed, any questions? Commissioner Ains Messenger, go for it.
Commissioner, may I jump in very quickly? This is Monique Rumo, the Executive Director of Operations. And before you guys got into the questions, I just wanted to do a shout out to the team because our CEFMP was featured in the National Center on School Infrastructure as a standout example of a state mandated school facilities planning document. And they said they feature the plan as an example of schools nationwide developing a facilities planning document. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys had had the news that they had gotten this recommendation. So it's Maureen Gershberg and her team members, Alex Bennett and Brian Slabowski.
Yeah, no, thank you for highlighting and lifting up that credit where credit is due. Absolutely, and certainly, you know, the decade of progress that this represents, you know, is pretty phenomenal. I know I've said it in different public sessions as well, but you know how you all have managed and been so thoughtful should absolutely be commended and recognized. And I'm glad to hear of that specific award, Ms. Romo. So thank you for highlighting that. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Ains Messenger.
Given that comment, I'm actually gonna switch the order of my questions. This has been like the area that I have just learned, I think, more than anything else while being on the board, and just the immense amount of thoughtfulness and how this plays into so many of our other conversations around budget, around portfolio, around the like long-term district. And I guess that kind of looks at the question of what's next. You're like, obviously, this is a rabbit hole to which there is no bottom. And for those of us who like to geek out on this dashboard is a beautiful and wonderful thing. I think looking, and Maureen, and for you as the rest of the team as well, a lot of the why for the other decisions that the district and the board makes is based in this document. And so looking over the next 5 years, the thought and the detail is there. What kind of would be the next steps for strategy in terms of how do we engage the community in this process and thought, and using this as a moment to teach and help understand and bring the community along on these decision-making processes. That, you know, the district staff and to a lesser extent the board spend a lot of time and thought, but kind of like, do you have any recommendations on the right level of engagement, and kind of what are some strategies for those who might be slightly less down the rabbit hole to engage at a higher level with this content?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have any immediate recommendations. I think we've been, over the years, striving to make things more accessible. 10 years ago, we had a Word document that was 600 pages long. And so we have come a long way in terms of being able to make things more accessible. As you alluded to, it's very easy to kind of get lost in very detailed, granular information. I think I want to actually chat with Angela about that and then get back to you. Is that okay?
And Commissioner, what I'd add to that too, I think that's an excellent question, and it's also one that we would probably discuss with the new CEO in terms of direction and strategy as well.
And so I think like this is like looking at how is there that immediate answer? And yes, of course, that is not a question that there is an immediate answer to. I do think looking at kind of what the strategic priorities will be over the next 5 years, and looking at the work around portfolio, looking at the work around high performing schools, just kind of to be thinking about how do we do this and how do we speak to this, and helping families engage with content at a variety of levels would be a thing.
Commissioner, before you go to your next question, I know you said you had more than one. I do want to just underscore this point. I think this is what you're getting at, but I'll add my observation and perspective is in the listening sessions that the board did over the past year relating to the CEO search. We did hear and have had reflected and have talked about, and this is part of the strategic direction that I know you, Commissioner Messenger, leading on the strategic planning committee, thinking about like how do we, where do we go from here? Like the progress and the work that you all have done has been tremendous. And to the point about as the new CEO comes in, one of the things that I know we as a board will be asking the CEO and you all, you all are the experts and have the details and the insights, is to step back and look more comprehensively at some of the underlying pieces here. You know, we've heard a number of voices in this process that have asked questions about the portfolio, although they haven't, as I said it in the exact language and the lingo of how we talk about it. And so I think what I want to underscore and what Commissioner Messenger is saying is we want to be messaging to you all that this is an area that there would be we see benefit, and we have heard from community members a desire to engage in a broader conversation around portfolio. And this frankly touches on so many aspects that are operational, you know, the questions and the answers to the questions relating to transportation, chronic absenteeism, do touch on some of the foundational assumptions that are made in the portfolio choice and the school choice structure and some of how that is. And while we don't presuppose what answers are to these questions, we are absolutely I'm wanting for you all to hear from us that we are hearing a desire to look broadly at these things. And that is certainly a charge that we are giving to the incoming CEO to say we would like you to look at these with the team that's here and really be thoughtful along that. I don't know if you want to add more to what I'm saying, Commissioner Messenger, or Commissioner Mohammed wants to on this point before. Yeah.
I think jumping in of like absolutely agreeing with that. And I think that as a district, the board, staff, all of us in with one voice looking at this is where we're going. And I think calling on that there is excellent data and data analysis and the thoughtfulness in that, and then kind of that medium pace of just not communicating an outcome, but looking at how do we help people be engaged in those conversations, like how do we equip everyone, not if even if you're not a district staff super user, to be part of those conversations and understand the rationale behind hard decisions, even if it's not one that you personally agree with or like or serves your own school well, that you understand that we as a district are able to have these hard conversations well. So.
Commissioner Mohammed, I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on this point in particular. If you do, feel free to chime in. Commissioner Ismeshri, you had a second
I had two much more detailed questions. Maureen, would it be possible to go back to slide 11 and 12? And this is something of just kind of framing and making sure that I am understanding this clearly. Looking at both of these sets of data for the demographic trends as well as the capture rate. And again, there are holes in our data collection and you might not, I would say you don't have the perfect answer, but to the best ability, how much of this gap is represented by students who are going and finding education outside of city schools? So whether that's private, enrolling in surrounding counties, et cetera, how much of that is students that are not matriculating in school at all? And how much of that is people that are, making decision to move? Just kind of what are the out ramps that are showing up in that data gap?
The majority of data that we've seen shows that it's the in-migration, honestly. We've always had, we've been pretty steady in the past around that 70% of the capture rate. And then obviously there's a lot of changes occurring with overall just population decreases in Baltimore City, and then our in-migration occurring at higher and higher rate levels each year. The majority of it, we believe, is coming, the data shows, is coming from that in-migration and not necessarily more people or increasing amounts choosing to go to like a private setting or leaving out the city.
And then just a quick, I know that this might be more of a conversation for enrollment, but what are the kind of the key grade points that we're seeing that out migration?
That from what the thing that we've looked at that in the past, and honestly, it seems to vary from year to year. The OEA is more better positioned to be able to give a data-informed answer on that. But from what we've seen, there's a variety of factors, because there was also, before the Great Recession, there was a birth bubble. And so seeing that bubble matriculate through impacts where we see higher levels or lower levels. We also know that there are big changes that happen at 6th grade and big changes that happen at 9th grade for a number of reasons. And so I wouldn't, I think it's a number of reasons, and then having to bring them together means that often there's not always a consistent grade band where things happen. 6th, yes, 9th, definitely. But again, like the matriculating cohort bubbles also impact it. And then you have your in-migration occurring that for that, there's a pretty large impact we've seen in the past where there's a larger number at the 9th grade level due to students coming in who might not have had a lot of formal education before that, but you don't necessarily want to put like a 16-year-old in a middle school. So it's complicated. Did that answer your question?
Commissioner Mohammed, any questions from you on this presentation? I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the work, team, as it is exhaustive and it was helpful.
Yeah, and what on a point of just sort of understanding where we're at in the process, you were outlining a couple of the next steps that we should anticipate, Maureen, as it relates to the full written, this presentation. And I do want to just say thank you for how succinct and like how you put things into the appendix that were more detailed, but I really appreciate that. that rigorous process of reducing the amount in the slides, and knowing that there's a much larger document that is generated. Just give me a sense for like when that document is working its way through and the board will have a chance to see, read, review the full document.
Yep. So we're aiming to get the draft executive summary out when we get the PowerPoint to the board. So we'll have that, and then the chapters themselves will probably be complete around I want to say end of May latest, and then full document will go to the state by July 1st.
And in terms of just globally, it's been raised certainly already on this call about the CEO transition. Just really full, and in our role as the board, and in your role as staff that hold so much of this insight and expertise and knowledge, certainly wanting to find those best ways to bridge, and we certainly just want to underscore and elevate and celebrate how strong you all are on this work, and that's something that I want you all to hear from us, to know that we are saying, in our conversations that the team is strong here, that does this work, that you all have made really thoughtful, wise decisions that put the district in as healthy of a position as you could go back a long time and compare. So certainly, I just want to underscore and have you all hear that from us, that we are, as a board, feeling that there is so much here to celebrate and to maintain, and to continue and to see. And while there is this transition moment, and that transition moment does provide an opportunity for some broader questions to be asked and to be reviewed. I want you all to know that as we are doing that, we feel like we are doing that. We want, as a board, we want to be doing that with you all and the CEO, and building on the solid work, and the tremendous progress. And it's one of those things, I remember, I think I said this a year ago when we were talking about some of the buildings that were being surplused and some of the non-instructional buildings. Like, you all have just been so thorough and thoughtful, because you have been as diligent and organized as you have been, that you are able to think broader and not just putting out the most immediate fires. You have solved some of the hardest problems, and the issues with whether it's HVAC and heating and cooling and these different things. And so the way that you all have been able to do that work over a decade means that now we can all ask together the question of what is possible in the next decade. Where do we go from here? And so as you hear those questions, I just want you to know some of the surrounding sentiment, at least that's coming from me, and I know it is shared among other board members, that we are building on and building with such a great foundation that's here. So thank you for the hard work.
Yep, I'll be sure to pass your appreciation on to the team.
And every award that you get is well deserved. There should be more, but glad to hear about the recent one. Okay, so with that, we will move on. I know those were two significant items on the agenda today. There's a whole set of another ones that relate to some supplemental appropriations and some specific items there. So I believe I see a number of folks from Finance on Marianne Cox. If you would, I imagine you might be introducing some of this.
Yes, that's true. This is Marianne Cox. I'm the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for City Schools. And today I'm here to extend greetings on behalf of CFO Chris Doherty to our ops committee members, our commissioners, our staff, and our community partners. There's always a great deal of interest in terms of questions regarding our funding, and certainly supplemental appropriations are part of our funding. And sometimes, as you'll see by the descriptions you'll get today, we sometimes allocate fundings from one fund to another if a need arises in another fund. I wanted to make some introductory comments here. Today, we have a total of 6 supplemental appropriations, which is actually a large number for us to do all at one time. The 6 will relate to some requests for FY 2026, and there's at least one for FY 2027. The 6 that we're going to have, that we have 6 if you include 2 for third-party billing, which Casey Davis is going to present in a PowerPoint. And the third-party billing supplementals are split into requested funding for FY 2026 and then some for 2027. So that would be why we would have 2. Then we have 3 that relate to funding passing between the Capital Projects Fund and the General Fund back and forth for various needs. And our final supplemental will be presented by Courtenay Desabay relating to our state aid adjustments for FY 2026. The 3 supplemental appropriations that discuss requests relating to Capital Projects Fund and the General Fund, I'll be offering some comments, and Cindy Smith and her operations group is available and will provide the details for some of these requests. I wanted to point out that all of our supplemental appropriations relate to board priorities 3, 5, and 7. They relate to priority 3 and that it relates to high quality modernized facilities and resources supporting the success of our students. Priority 5 relates to equal access to our district services, resources, and facilities. And priority 7 relates to equity at all levels to create a welcoming and inclusive academic and professional environment, for our students. I wanted to remind everyone that essentially supplemental appropriations are accounting transactions, which is how finance becomes involved in the process. Because of board policy DIG, the board granted the CEO as their designee the authority to create a assigned fund balance as we close our books each year, to create this assigned fund balance in the general fund. So there's some uses there in our supplementals. Many times we will set money aside in general fund assigned fund balance for reallocation with specific board approval to the Capital Projects Fund for the specific projects for which they were created. I do want to point out that supplemental appropriations are all board action items, so that we are requesting board approval for each and every one of the supplemental appropriations. This board specific approval is required because following funding is and being able to track it as we report it within the confines of our audited financial statements. They're part of our year-end closing and our audit review and basically our financial report. So the auditors will go from our first adopted budgets and follow through the sequence of board approvals till we get to the end for our final one as we report our budgets in the financial statements. Okay, so those are the overall comments. And so I would like to pass this time to Casey Davis, who will be presenting the 2 supplemental appropriations for third-party billing. And we have staff from other offices here to support her and to answer any questions that may arise from the Ops Committee. So Casey, if you would take over now, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank
If the
you.
board will give me just a moment to get my screen going here. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this just fine. Okay, thank you so much, Marianne. Really appreciate the introduction. Super helpful in grounding us in what these supplemental appropriation requests are. I'm here to present part 1 and part 2 of our third-party billing supplemental appropriation request. I am here today and will be as well at the board if these are pulled for additional comments. But today, on behalf of Lori Lynn Sutton, who is our Executive Director of Special Education, she's out at the Council of Great City Schools, so won't be able to be here with us as I go through these today. So part 1 is an FY26 request. So what we're going to go through here, I'll skip very briefly over that finance overview. Marianne already did a great job signaling what a supplemental appropriation is. We'll talk a little bit about third-party billing just to remind us all what we're talking about there. And then really for this one, we'll talk about the FY26 request for supplemental appropriation. So again, a supplemental appropriation is an ask of a restricted fund balance, which we have amassed over time. In this case, that fund balance is tied to our third-party billing. Third-party billing is where City Schools receives Medicaid reimbursement for specific services that are provided to students with IEPs. I have listed those services up here for which we currently receive Medicaid reimbursement. When we receive this reimbursement, it kind of does two things for us, right? It establishes an actual annual budget for the district that we can spend. So that's just third-party billing revenue. We're able to spend that. And as we get in Medicaid reimbursement that goes above that budget, it goes into our restricted fund balance and becomes a balance for us at the end of that year. With our third-party billing budget annually, we set aside about $8 million, and these really go towards supporting special education investments, as well as the actual administration of third-party billing. Can't get that Medicaid reimbursement without actually administering the proper steps in order to do so. So this is really where our general fund, our third-party billing budget itself goes to. Again, the restricted fund balance itself comes from when we don't spend the full $8 million, that goes back into our coffers. And when we gain reimbursement that is greater than the expected budget, it goes back into our coffers. So for years, we've actually been able to amass a fund balance for third-party billing. At present, it sits at about $18 million from that Medicaid reimbursement. Over the course of the past couple of years, the state, of course, has continued to encourage us to spend this fund balance down in service of our students with disabilities. So what you'll see in the request today, both part 1 and part 2, we're looking to do just that and leverage some of that fund balance to support students in ways that are allowable with IDEA Part B. So for this particular request, what we are looking for is approval of $3.2 million to support our current FY26 one-to-one aid contracts. We came to the board, gosh, I want to say it was in December, talking about our one-to-one aid costs and even an increase that we needed writ large in our contracts for those contracts. The assignment of aides, so the sheer volume of aides in our district, as well as the cost of aides has increased since FY24. And so adding these funds to our general funds where we go to pay for this will allow us to fully close out those services and ensure that students don't face any interrupted services throughout the remaining course of this school year. We're here today at the Operations Committee. We'll be bringing this back to the Board of School Commissioners on May 5th. And once approved, fingers crossed, all of our funds will then, the requested funds of $3.2 million will go directly to support the provision of one-to-one aid services for students. So I'll pause here for any questions about the Part 1 supplemental appropriation request. And then while I'm answering those, I'll bring up the presentation for Part 2.
Any questions for my fellow commissioners?
None. Thank you for your diligence on making sure that we recoup those dollars for kids.
You can continue on to the second part.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Love it. And thank you. Yes, bringing those monies back into the district to really support our students is such a win for us. And I think you'll see that in part 2 as well, which is a little bit more detailed. And I think what you all will recall from the past 2 school years, we've come to you all asking for a supplemental appropriation to really support more direct services to students at schools. So this is going to kind of play on that a bit. So again, I'm going to skip over the purpose and process for supplemental appropriation and the third-party billing overview. We just did those, which is great. So I'll skip forward and jump right into the reflections on the work we've done previously when making these requests, like this specific kind of request. And then I'll talk about our FY27 supplemental appropriation request. So again, skipping over these because we've already seen them. Nothing new here. This is where I'll pause though, because for the last 2 school years, we've come back to the board and asked for 2 separate kind of supplemental appropriations. The first one, we've increased from year to year for expanded school behavioral health. This particular request has gone really well and has supported the expansion of mental health services across our schools. In fact, we initially asked for $1 million. We then moved that up to 3.1 million. It is well spent. We spend all the funds and it goes directly to kiddos. So that's a super win for us. You'll see we're going to keep that one going. The other allocation we've asked for, and we did increase it from the initial ask to this current year, was for a school-based allocation. First year, it was a little over 3 million, and this year it was 4.5 million. Again, you know, in general, this is a win, right? We want our schools to be able to have access to the funds that they've actually generated for our students with IEPs. That said, where we've really struggled is that schools have returned typically more than 40 to 50% of the funds that we've allocated out. And that's for a whole host of reasons, which I'll go into here, but we're just not sure that that avenue for spending is getting our biggest bang for buck. So essentially, you know, we struggle when it comes to plan development, submission timelines, approvals. Those just administratively take a lot of time. So even though we backed up our timelines to get money into the hands of schools earlier this year than we had previously, we still hit a lot of just administrative roadblocks that happen in a bureaucracy as large as ours, to be quite frank. So not only do we have that sort of initial front approval challenges, but then even as we're spending, tracking, invoicing, etc., we face another set of administrative challenges in spreading our funds so wide across our schools. And then, of course, to that last point, because we've spread our funds so wide, we actually aren't able to track that return on investment, which is really, really critical for us. Like, we want to know that not only are these funds going back into schools, but frankly, that they're buying more than paper, you know, or more than a couple of devices. We really want to maximize the funds that we have on behalf of our students. Spreading it as far as we have doesn't allow us to capture that. And we fear that it really has a limited impact on behalf of students who really need it. So we have taken a look at adjusting our approach, right? You got to learn from what you did before and make adjustments moving forward. So that's what we're seeking to do. We're obviously going to continue what worked, right? Our expanded school behavioral health work under Dr. Pate is doing a great job. And so we want to make sure we're maintaining that. What didn't quite work as well is shifting all the other money to schools. So instead, what we would like to do is centralize investments on behalf of our schools. Use these funds to invest in tiered interventions that all students can access in service of mitigating over-identification for special education, as well as providing students with IEPs more targeted supports and differentiated learning opportunities. And then we also want to be able to invest in expanded school year programs and transportation in order to get our students with disabilities to those extended year programs. The final piece here, I apologize, I should have removed that. That's really leaning back into that FY26 ask when we separated these presentations. So I'll remove that before it goes to the board. But the other one is to cover that additional costs of aids. So again, shifting here from our vantage point, ensures that we get increased access at scale, which is key here, to interventions and services for students. We just feel that that is the bigger bang for buck when it comes to leveraging these funds effectively. So what does it actually look like? Tiered interventions for us, we're looking at spending just shy of $1 million, 600,000. Expanded school behavioral health is going to 2 million. Now, don't worry, it's not because we're cutting any of that. It's because we've actually funded the other million of that, leveraging Title IV funds in their health and safety segment of that grant. So it's still fully funded at the rate it was before, but we only need 2 million coming out of the fund balance moving forward. And then finally, we have $6.1 million, which contributes to expanded school year. So that's our summer learning for students with disabilities and the transportation in order to get those kiddos there. So walking through each of those briefly, the 600,000 to support tiered interventions further undergirds the work that we're doing with our multi-tiered system of supports. You all heard this in the board presentation around the larger budget. As we're moving forward, City Schools is really committed to ensuring that we are providing high quality Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions to students, both those who already have IEPs as well as those who don't, in an effort to really stem the tide of over-identification. So these materials are absolutely critical for us here in City Schools and for our students. Again, expanded school behavioral health, I can't say enough, really doing great work on that early intervention and prevention side of things, providing therapeutic mental health services to our students who need them in a timely manner. Again, this is another one of those investments that helps us to mitigate over-identification for students with disabilities based on behavioral concerns. This one's a total win for us. We want to keep it going, 2 million here, and then another million in Title IV. And finally, extended school year. So again, extended school year just provides that summer programming to students who are eligible that have IEPs. And this helps us to supplement their school year experience to maintain the quality of supports that they're receiving. And in order to do this, we need our kiddos to show up. So having transportation that allows them to partake in those activities with us over the summer is also critical. So you'll see here of our 6.1 ask, 3.5 goes to the programming itself, and 2.6 is in support of our transportation needs. So next steps, here we are, Operations Committee. We'll have this go to the board on the 5th. I will update that slide. And then we will send communications out to schools so that they know what's happening with the third-party billing funds, as well as how we're leveraging them on their behalf. And then, of course, as soon as approved, the funds will go to the direct provision of programs and services for our students. All right, I will pause here for any questions. Thank you all for the time today.
Yes, no, thank you. Questions from fellow commissioners? Commissioner Haynes Messenger.
Hey, I have 2 quick questions about the extended date. So that would be for year 27, the summer of 27. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's for this summer, which is 2026. But it's technically in fiscal 27 because of July 1. Yeah.
Got it. And so hypothetically, where would those items be coming? What would be the plan right now if this wasn't funded for how those services would be provided?
Sure. So ultimately what we would do, so this is only part of the funding associated with this. We fund extended school year services out of IDEA as well.
Right.
And then we have certain services that are funded on our general fund. So this really allows us to bolster those. But we would ultimately, right, if this wasn't approved, we'd have to adjust some things with our existing funds on IDEA, as well as other grant sources that we have in the district in order to provide the same robust level of programming.
At some point, like I'm understanding at some point, the goal in moving this into, this is programming, especially for students with our most significant needs to happen either way. At some point, moving this most bounded funding to an easy place to spend where we get it cleared, and then that frees up other funding at the district level or at the school level to be able to meet future needs. Is that fundamentally kind of where we're going?
Well, for sure, it is fundamentally where we are going. I mean, in fact, we've had broader conversations about not the supplemental appropriation for third-party billing, but how that initial 8 million is used. And so, yes, I think our goal is this. We don't want this to continue to be on a supplemental, but we do want to make sure that we're offering that programming as we sort of hit a, difficult fiscal year. So we're looking at moving all of those things more into our, I want to call it general fund space, right? But it's the funds that we already have access to. What I want to adjust maybe in what you said is schools themselves, right, don't contribute to the extended school year work. So this isn't a save on their budgets per se. It really comes out of the Office of Special Ed. It comes out of IDEA funding. It comes out of third-party billing.
That is, I guess what I'm getting at is that this previously had been dollars that were, the decision was that it should go to the school for school-based decisions,
Oh,
and that this is coming
I'm sorry.
back to district office at some point. Is there an effort being made that future funds would be allocated to the schools down the road?
Thank you. Okay, I apologize because I misunderstood your question. So thank you so much for clarifying. So again, the reason why we're making this shift is because we've had a lot of difficulty having schools spend, being able to track that spending and ensuring that the spending is fully aligned to support students with disabilities. So I think the struggle on our end in trying to pull it central is to ensure that we can have economies of scale working in our favor when it comes to making these investments. I don't know, and it's not solely my decision, if we would go and send additional monies out to school through a supplemental appropriation in the future. I think we've seen limited impact on the last 2 years that we've done it. And so we're seeking to try an alternative approach that we think will have a greater impact for kids. I don't think that precludes us or, would have us to never send money back out to schools. I just think that at this time, we weren't seeing that return on investment. And so I've attempted to shift our approach for the coming school year.
That makes sense at many, many levels. I guess some of that too is looking at the interplay between district spending in terms of where these funds are for third-party billing and looking at the distribution of those funds from by type of school. Like, so I guess getting a sense of where are these primarily coming from special day? Are they coming from students in citywide programs? Are they coming from kind of a one-off student getting an IEP service? Like, kind of where are the majority's funding coming from? And then where are those being spent? I guess like I'm trying to make sure we're recouping or we're billing for most of these funds that are coming from a Claremont. Are the majority of these funds going to serve a Claremont? Or if it's a one-off kid, in my child's elementary school at at Hamden, to make sure that where the billing is matching where the spending is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And at some point, if that isn't the goal, that's fine. I think I'd just like to explain kind of the strategy there.
Sure, wonderful. So I know that there are other folks from third party. I don't want to speak to which schools are contributing most to the actual third party billing revenue pot or to the fund balance. So I think Ms. Foster is on the call and perhaps Eris Coleman, and they may be able to speak to that. I can also ask them to pull that information for you. I do know that it comes from all of those sources though. Any of the services that we are able to bill for, we bill for. They certainly exist at a Claremont as much as they exist at a Hamden. But you're right, it may be a one-off service here as opposed to multiple services somewhere else. I see Ms. Foster has raised her hand. So Ms. Foster, if you're able to contribute to Commissioner Messenger's question, that'd be great.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity, Commissioner Messenger. As related to the billing or for the funding for third-party billing, the cadre of the money that is collected from third-party billing is from various schools. Our highest amount do come from service coordination and from IEP meetings. So what our office does is that based on students having a signed service coordination medical consent letter, that is what is the foundation in order for us to bill. So we base it on that. Schools are required to do third-party billing on a monthly basis. So that is how we do. And at the end of the year, we look at the revenue. We then are able to tell you how much each school did bring in by revenue.
At some point, if it's possible to have a de-identified version of that report, I would be interested. Partially, how do we replicate best practices, and that how do we make sure that we recoup funds for work that we need to do anyway by law, I think is great. I think also just it's a interesting insight into patterns of services within the district. So if it is possible for me to have a version of that, don't don't spend a lot of time or energy creating it, but I would be interested. Thank you so much. That's helpful context.
Thank you. That will not be a problem at all. I will meet with my director, Ms. Coleman, and we can definitely provide you that information based on the 186 schools. We can definitely give you the information on how much revenue is reached by each school and the number of students that we are billing. We only bill for students who have an active medical assistance number. We don't bill for students who have private insurance. So based on the assigned letters and an active MA number, we will be able to give you that information you requested.
Thanks. That's really interesting insight into the district as a whole. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
No, thank you for these questions, Commissioner Haynes-Messenger. One question that I do have is how much will be remaining in the fund balance if these requests are all approved?
So if both the FY26 and the FY27 remain, right now we're sitting at a balance of 18. And this would remove, I want to say 11 point, gosh, I should have had that number off the top of my head. Essentially, we'll have about $7 million remaining in the fund balance. What that doesn't, Mary Ann's got her hand up because I'm sure she has the precise number. What it doesn't, what I will say before turning over to Mary Ann is what we will have remaining will also be added to based on what isn't spent this year, for example, as well. So I think she can probably give a rough estimate of what that would look like with these both being approved. Mary Ann?
Yes, thank you so much for being able to offer a little bit of clarification. I just wanted to point out that actually the fund balance, in this case, restricted fund balance for the special revenue fund, which is all related to the third-party billing excess. That is the cumulative excess of revenue over expenditures. That's it in a nutshell. That's all it is. So what we have done over the years is finance has always planned to have a certain buffer amount in the third-party billing restricted fund balance just to be available for a time when in a given year we may have less revenue than what we planned. And while we budget the totality of the expenditures, it could happen, and frankly, it has happened, that we will have our revenue less than our expenditures. So that little buffer, whatever it is held there to offset that, so that third-party billing, this supplemental grant, essentially is self-funding.
Yeah, one thing I would certainly appreciate understanding is historically, what has that amount been, just as we go back for the past couple of years? Is the 7 million, 8 million that would be remaining, is that in line with historical where we keep things, or is the 18 million more in line with where, what's the number over the past couple of years, and how does this compare to those? So I don't need that right now, but certainly when it's coming to the full board, I would like to have a sense for how does this compare to prior years.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, the balance had been accumulating over a number of years. It started around 2018, 2019. Before that, we just had nominal amounts. And it started to building for a number of reasons. And I think we hit a high of about 26 million at one point. And now it's down to 18, and it will decline further. It's prudent for us to use these funds, these available funds, to provide services to the students from whom the income was generated. So that is the plan that we've been encouraged to do by MSDE, and so City Schools has done our best. But we're happy to give you a historical record of what the restricted fund balance has been, say, for the last 10, 15 years. So you could see how it built up, and now it's going down. Certainly. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Tanisha, just so for my awareness, do we have any public comment signed up for today?
Hi, good afternoon. No, we do not have any public comment for today.
Okay. Knowing that we still have a number of items on the agenda, I'd like to make sure we do move through, even if we don't have public comment. So these represent the various supplemental but I believe we're only on the third-party billing. We still need to go over some of the other ones, correct?
That's correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
let's-
We can try
yeah.
to move through them quickly if you like.
Please, thank you.
Okay. All right. So good morning, commissioners. I will go through the next three supplemental appropriations, and Cindy Smith who provided the detail for the request, is also on the call, and she will be able to answer any questions from an operations standpoint. I do want to point out that the very first one that we have was entitled the Francis Scott Key Remediation Project. That has two parts, and I just wanted to bring to the board's attention. As we've noted before, and I wanted to emphasize again, whenever City Schools wants to reallocate funding from fund balance in any way, either between funds or within a fund, we ask specific board permission to use the fund. The CEO, as the board designee, may create assigned fund balance, but only the board can authorize the use of the funds. So that's where we are right now. We are coming to the board with three requests here for the various fund balances related to capital projects and the general fund. And speaking with the first one, again, it was entitled the Francis Scott Key Remediation Project, but I wanted to point out that there are two parts to it. If you look at the presentation, and Arzu Ramani was going to go, okay, there it is. So we need to bring the
Hi, I'm not able to bring it to the
presentation
front.
over to the center if we could, so people could read it.
Yep, I've got it sharing. I just need a producer to bring it to the front.
Yeah, is there a way I can select it to bring it over?
No, either Tanisha or
Tanisha,
Sarita.
if you could spotlight that. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you
y'all.
so much. Thank you. If you read the details on this clearly marks where there are two parts to this particular one. What has happened over the years, and the board likely remembers it, is that we, finance and operations, have come to the board to ask for a transfer from general fund balance, assigned fund balance specifically, to send money to the capital projects fund for them to spend on specific projects, which the board has approved. So historically, we have produced these, we have submitted the request, the board has approved, the money went to the capital projects fund, and now we are reassessing whether or not we have remaining funds. And that's what the first part of this request is. The operations group has been working with our manager of capital projects and accounting to identify those funds that could be available for reallocation. And the amount that we have identified is approximately $5.2 million. So that's the first part of it. So what we're saying is this money is currently being held in various project line items within the capital projects funds. That funding is no longer needed, and Cindy Smith could talk about that. And so what we're saying is, do we have the board's permission to move that funding of $5.2 million down to restricted fund balance for the capital project funds, from where we will reallocate it for other uses with board approval? So we do have some updates to this number, but you can see where they're coming from a variety of projects that the board has approved over the years. So what we are saying now is this funding is no longer needed there. Do we have your permission to take that money out of the reserve within the fund for the specific projects and move it down to restricted fund balance as it is held in the capital projects fund? And then we're going to ask your permission to reallocate that out for two specific uses. So we've got $5.2 million here. This is the first part to this request. If I could see the next slide, please. this is the first request for the use of that. From that $5.2 million that we are asking the board's permission to move down to fund balance and capital projects fund, we would like the board's permission to set aside $2.5 million of that for an amount to fund part of the Francis Scott Key repair remediation project. So Cindy Smith has given us some narrative there, and she is available to answer any questions if you have any other comments on the Francis Scott Key request.
Let's continue through all of the different supplemental items and then take any questions people have.
Excellent. That's fine. Okay, so that's the first one. The next one, this is another one that will go back to our comment about the CEO has the authority to create assigned fund balance in the general fund. What had happened is we closed out FY 2025. The CEO approved the creation of a line item for assigned fund balance in the general fund of $15.8 million. So it has been determined that that funding has actually been covered by IAC, so we no longer have a need to fund it through the general fund. So what we are asking is, do we have the permission to temporarily borrow from unassigned fund balance in the general fund, and that funding will be replenished at year end when we close the books out and we close that project out. So what we have here is $15.8 million that we are saying we no longer use in general fund, unassigned fund balance. And we're asking the board's permission to go through the process as is described here, and that we would like to reallocate that. Please go to the next slide. For general fund transportation needs in the FY 2026 operating budget. So essentially what we're asking the board's permission to do is to take the money from assigned fund balance and process it as a supplemental appropriation to the general fund to be used for transportation expenditures in FY 2026. Okay, that's the first part. If we could go to the next one, please. This next one harkens back to the that first reallocation within the capital projects fund, where we said, may we take the $5.2 million and move it down to the capital projects fund restricted fund balance. This is another use of it, so that if the board approves both requests, the $2.5 million for the Francis Scott Key remediation project, and this $2.7 million to be transferred from the capital projects fund back to the general fund, again, to be used for general fund operating expenditures for transportation for the extended school year. That was part of FY 2026. So that's really what that is about. So you can see these supplementals, these three of them are very much intertwined and result in getting the money ultimately where we see need for it in the general fund, as well as the capital projects fund for the Francis Scott Key remediation project. So we have one more supplemental after this, so we can either take questions now for these three, or we can have Courtenay Desabé present his information on the additional general fund supplemental appropriation related to state aid adjustments.
Yes, I do think the state aid adjustment is slightly different. So if there are questions from our fellow commissioners, I will take those now, but also cognizant of time. Okay. Because if there's not, folks can share those, or they could share them in writing anyway. So unless I hear something from one of the commissioners, let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay. Courtenay, would you please turn on your, okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So this supplemental appropriation harkens back a little bit to last year around this time when we were presenting the fiscal year 26 budget. At that point in time, when we developed the budget, we were under the strong impression that there were going to be some state level cuts in the budget allocation or funding for our revenue from the state. So we had built in our budget those cuts. It was much more prudent for us to build the budget based on not receiving those funds and then hopefully have them come in, as opposed to doing the opposite, which was building them, building the budget with the funds in, and then we didn't get the funds and then we'd have to make additional cuts at schools. So we told the board about this at a point in time when we submitted the budget last year. And we also said that, once we received the additional funding, we would add that to the budget and make sure that translated to schools. So this is what this transaction is. We did receive that additional funding. The schools have received their portion of that funding. We made it part of their enrollment adjustments in the fall. So now we're doing the transaction to recognize that funding as revenue and add it to the budget. So that, when we go through the process of closing our books at the end of the fiscal year, we have the correct budget amount for fiscal year 26. So we broke it down into the different categories under which the funding was provided. So those 4 categories in foundation, CWI, compensatory, and multilingual were because of the rescinded cuts. In addition to that, our pre-K amount was adjusted and our blueprint coordinator amount that MSD gave us initially was not the correct or full amount. So we're incorporating all those changes into this supplemental. So essentially, the variance is that it's an increase of $21.5 million over what we had in our budget initially for FY26. So that's the purpose of this supplemental appropriation. Any questions?
Well, no, I'll just say thank you for the approach that you all took at this. And I do recall it being a point of discussion a year ago. And it is nice to see that approach has been implemented, and certainly far better than the alternative of having to later reduce, is far more disruptive than later add. So thank you for your approach and the work here. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll say thank you. And yeah, if there are questions that folks do have, we certainly have the opportunity to provide those ahead of the upcoming May 5th board meeting or during the board meeting, for that. Moving to the next item in the agenda, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yes, procurement agenda is next, and we have only 1 or 2 items, as I recall. I think 2 items for today.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie Kamenecki, and I am in the procurement department. As noted, we just have 2 items today. The first is the Chief of Staff requests the board's approval to amend the current contract with Michael McBride from $100,000 to $132,000. And this is to continue to provide project management for the district office building improvements and the Maggie McIntosh Arts Center renovations. The contract term is July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. And this is section 11.1.
Just noting, I guess, for my fellow commissioners and others, the memo from the Chief of Staff highlighting why this procurement is coming now, while you can clearly see that the dates for the agreement are far in the past, ending now. It's the increases of the increased needs have pushed it over the threshold that does now require board approval, or would require board approval for those increases. So just like noting why the contract term is what it is for this item. Any questions on this?
Can you give
next item. Go for it. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it, Chair. Can you give us some clarification around the increased needs? It's I understand why it's coming to us and why that's important, but just clarity around what those needs actually are.
Committee Chair Coy, I'm here. This is Allison Perkins Cohen. I can answer some questions if that's helpful.
Please, thank you.
Yeah. So this is, we've employed Mr. McBride to work on over the, we've been trying to improve, as hopefully you've all noticed, some of the public-facing spaces for city schools. And then there's the Maggie McIntosh. So I'm going to kind of separate them in two buckets. But so through this work, we've been trying to, for a long time, the central office, we obviously always prioritize investments in schools first, and thankfully through the 21st Century Investments and partnerships with many of our partners who do school beautifications, we've done a lot, not enough. There's still a lot to do on our school buildings, but we've made a lot of progress on a number of our schools with 31 new buildings, 34 new schools so far. And this work was to try to make sure our district office has been a welcoming place for our visitors, as well as that it supports work in our staff. So it's the shared spaces and public facing spaces that we've particularly focused on. So of course the boardroom, the two lobbies on the Guilford side and the main lobby, the art gallery wall that was installed in between, the MESC Welcome Center for newcomer families, the Human Capital reception area for staff who are waiting for support from Human Capital, 301, which is a space that a lot of staff use for our larger meetings. We don't have that many large meeting space, so that was one of them. And then the CEO's large conference room and the CEO small, also conference spaces that are used, that are available to all staff to use, especially in CEO large for larger meetings. And then we also, that's happening now, is we're also addressing the signage issues in the building. We have not, the signage in city schools has not changed since I started in city schools, and I've only been the chief of staff for 10 years, but I started in 2011, and it's the same signage as it was when I started, and it was wrong then, and it's still wrong. So this will be signage throughout the building. It will renumber room numbers because the room numbers don't really make sense, and then wayfinding signage, and then the fire exit signage in the stairwells will be part of this project, and that's part of the security upgrades that we did. So we, now you have the ID where you can buzz into the front, into the building, and so only people who work in the building can automatically, you wave their ID and get into the building. And so now we also want wayfinding signage to make it clearer where people are going, so we have less people wandering, trying to figure out through no fault of their own where they're going. That just helps from a security perspective too, that people know where they're headed, and you don't have people kind of just wandering the building who nobody's sure who they are, and that's a normal occurrence that you see people doing that. So that is one of the things. And then the Maggie McIntosh, we're still finishing up projects there, and Michael has led the development of those projects. So we're just trying to get all those across the finish line. I want those all, the central office work will all be completed by June 30th before Dr. Santelises leaves. So that'll be ready for Dr. Goff.
Commissioner Rahman, does that answer your question there?
It does. I think for clarity, the increase is due to signage that was not a part of the original scope of work. We've added a scope of work, which is the signage. That's the reason for the increase.
Yeah, we've added, as kind of the work has continued, we have added a little bit. So, and so, yeah, the sign is one of the things we weren't clear we were going to do from the beginning. And so we wanted to make sure we got that done, as well as mask was not necessarily one of the original pieces, but as they're deciding that there was other places we wanted to touch that impact our families. So.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly, you extending and asking someone who has done good work to do a little bit more good work. So appreciate and acknowledging that it's coming to us because of the threshold question, that, if it weren't for that dollar threshold ceiling being reached, these would be things that you all would not need to come to the board specifically for. Commissioner Rahman, any other follow-up on this one?
None here. Scope is clear.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, last item.
And the last item is section 15.1. The Chief Operating Officer requests the board's approval of a lease with the University of Baltimore for facilities use and shared services related to the temporary relocation of City College during its school renovation. The term is July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2028, and the estimated annual contract amount is $550,000. And this is necessary to formalize the arrangement and enable the timely reimbursement to UBalt for various services in the building.
Any questions on this one?
So
okay.
This is where I do have some questions, and forgive me, team, as this came to us a little late, so I haven't been able had the time to walk down some of the concerns that I have. But my questions lie in, is this consistent with the contract that we've already signed? Are these terms that we've already agreed to with the amount? And then just having an understanding around how much we spend for our high schools generally, how much are we spending on maintenance to ensure that our high schools are up to performance for our kids yearly? Can we receive numbers on that so that we can have a strong understanding across the board, both with this and what we are generally spending to ensure that a high school of this size is maintained?
Yep, thank you. My name is Maureen Gershberg. So this, just to provide a little clarity, the lease amount for this site is $1 per year. This additional cost is to cover the utilities and then minor maintenance that UBalt is performing because it is a shared space in some ways. And so that money is primarily the utilities, water, the electrical, the gas, which was negotiated, or it was within the MOU that the board approved back in 2024. So this is just giving us the money approval, since it's above $100,000, to be able to follow through on that commitment to pay for the utilities. But we can pull for you what utilities cost in our other schools.
So just so I'm clear, also, like, there's three different things that there's costs that have been incurred relating to this temporary housing, right? $1 a year for the space. Then there was the cost for some of the renovations that were specific to the retrofitting the space for the needs that a high school has versus a college might have. And then the third is these utility costs that are, or some of these facility costs that are now being presented. Those does that summarize the three different things that we are that cost that incurred with this temporary housing of City College?
Yes, plus I think there's some transportation costs just to help support their athletics.
Great. Okay. So that's great to have that understanding. Commissioner Hom, does that answer your question as it relates to, like, this is in line with the lease and this is for those annual facility items, but I guess with the additional information of, like, how does this compare to other building costs in that? Does that answer your question?
That's correct. If we can receive that follow-up, that'd be helpful. I think it is aligned with what we understood it to be. Now just want to, and like I said, we didn't get this until late, so forgive me for not being able to delve into more detail. But if we can receive that, that'll be helpful.
Yeah, and certainly I do appreciate that all of this is in preparation for the board meeting. So, like, yeah, while, you know, I don't expect you to have come with being able to track down all of your questions. This is sort of the time and space for you to be able to ask, and then for the team to be able to follow up. So certainly appreciate your thoughtfulness and the team's response to that ahead of the next board meeting.
Committee Chair,
yeah.
can Can I just one more point on this?
Please.
And I appreciate Commissioner Mohammed's questions. And I just know there's been some public conversation about this. And I just wanted to remind just the public, one thing is that anytime, when we're doing these 21st century buildings, many of them have to go to swing space. And whether it's our building or another building, there always has to be investment in that building to make it work for students. And so that's kind of just always part of the process. And in this case, the UB option, it was cheaper to renovate it than it was our own building. So just that's context. I think it's just important for people to have. And so anyway, but this is always, it's not perfect whenever you're swinging a school. There's all kinds of challenges with making it work, especially when we're doing all these high schools at once. But this has been just a very fortunate partnership with the UB to have that space that is more appropriate for students than the middle school we were going to put them in. And that's why it would have required so much renovation, the one we had.
Yeah, no, thank you for just underscoring that fact. Any other, I guess, comments, questions here? We are at the end of procurement. Commissioner Mohammed, anything else before we conclude? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I know we have gone over on the time for today, scheduled time, but appreciate the robust conversation, especially around AMP and the facilities master plan, as well as supplemental. We look forward to these items to the full board and appreciate the follow-ups that have been requested here today. But this is end of call for the operations committee meeting today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.